This week, coming from Brian's Grill in Fairfax, it's the Fairfax Sports Report. My name is Greg Wyszynski of the Connection Newspapers, and this week we will talk about field hockey, we will talk about volleyball, we'll talk about the exciting kickoff to the cross-country season, and of course, we'll talk about Week 2 of the Northern Region football schedule. Alongside me this evening, and a very, very smart and esteemed panel of guests. I'm talking about Joey Kamada of the Connection Newspapers, Jeff Graham of the Connection Newspapers, and joining us, Dave Fasanoli of the Sun Gazette. Good to see you again, my friend. It's been a while, and good to have you. Well, boys, before we get going, I want to thank all of the folks that make this show possible every week. And, of course, we would not be here without our underwriters, talking, of course, about quality care for service centers, for all of your service center needs, servicing all makes and models, 703-383-6299. CCI Screen Printing for all your screen printing needs, 703-978-0257. And while we have a moment, want to just invite everybody to Brian's Grill. It's a great place to be. We're going to be here Wednesday nights is when we tape. Come out, support the show, support your schools. It's a fun time.
Enjoy a brew.
Enjoy a brew, absolutely. Well, boys, I want to begin this week with field hockey. Now, field hockey season getting underway, starting to sort of get closer to district play. Woodson generally considered to be still one of the teams to beat in the region, coming off their big state championship season last year. What do you hear about field hockey this year?
Well, Centreville beat Woodson down in Virginia Beach at a tournament last weekend. You've obviously got Lake Braddock, who's starting off the season strong as usual. They're another team to look at. And then Oakton, 8 senior returning starters coming back to that team. You got to toss them in the mix. And they got knocked out by Woodson in the region quarterfinals last year. So they've got a vendetta. They've got a lot to avenge going back into the region tournament this year.
Now, Dave, we were talking before the show. Obviously, one of the big developments in the field hockey scene in the last week was at the Herndon Invitational Tournament. Madison actually beating Lake Braddock in that tournament, right?
Right, they beat Lake Braddock, and they finished second. They ended up losing to Stafford, I think, 2-1. But Madison's a coming program. I think this is the third year that the coach has been there, and last year they were better. And I think this year, it wouldn't surprise me if they do real well and make some noise in the region tournament.
And Gideon Sanders is the gentleman who came into that program, has kind of been slowly building towards something. Lake Braddock's sort of funny that way. I mean, there are different parts of the season where you think that maybe they're vulnerable. Then at the end, they always seem to pull it together. And obviously, coaching there is a big deal. I mean, coaching in field hockey overall seems to be one of the most important factors year after year. The programs that have good leadership, and we saw that when Star Carl was at Centreville, for instance, they always seem to be consistently good. There's very rarely a bad year for the programs with good coaches.
Right. One of the things Herndon coach Phyllis Pierce told me, this week, there are a lot of new coaches in the sport this year, and they got a chance to see their teams play at the Invitational. The interesting thing about the Invitational, Thursday's games were all canceled, so Friday's games had to be condensed into 30 minutes, so there weren't any second half comebacks in those games. Playing 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. So it was a good tournament. The weather kind of delayed some stuff, but a good early season tournament for some of these teams.
And we've got the tournament this weekend over at
Lee,
which is very much in danger of having the same thing that happened at Herndon, if not worse, happen should this Hurricane Ivan come up the coast and hit us as hard as some people are thinking about.
Well, the real tragedy is that this would be the second year that it's called the Under the Lights tournament at Lee. They begin it on Friday night, they continue it on into Saturday. It'd be the second year in a row that tournament's been washed out by a hurricane. I mean,
Isabel under the water tournament,
or the through the wind tournament, or something, right?
Right.
But it's a shame because one of the real charms, I think, of the field hockey season is the fact that you do have these massive early season tournaments where the games do count towards your overall record. You do get to see a good cross section of the region, especially at the end of Under the Lights tournament. You've got teams from the National, the Concord, the Liberty, and the Patriot District all playing in the same tournament. It's a really nice way to see different teams in the same setting, and it's a shame that now 2 years in a row Mother Nature is going to intervene and maybe wash the whole thing out. So we shall see. I mean, no telling what the weather's going to do. I remember Hurricane Gloria coming through when I was a kid in New Jersey, and it was supposed to knock down every house in central New Jersey and wound up being a light drizzle. So maybe Ivan will be the same thing. Who knows? But volleyball. Obviously, Langley, one of the teams you cover on a consistent basis. Tell me a little bit about the Langley Saxons this year.
Well, they have a lot of players back. And they kind of had maybe a little incentive this year because last year they got knocked out in the district tournament. I believe in the semifinals by McLean, and then they went on to the region and did okay. And then I think they lost there in the semifinals as well.
Now, if memory serves, I think that was actually a first-round game, wasn't it?
It was a first.
And then I think
game.
what happened was because of South Lakes coming into Liberty, McLean actually had to win a second game to make regionals, and I don't think they did.
I don't think they did either.
Yeah.
I don't think they did either. Right.
But Robinson's sort of in the same boat this year, where they were beaten by Lake Braddock in the district finals. It was the first loss they took all season, and they actually went out and beat Braddock on Monday in 3 straight games. So I guess postseason revenge is sort of a motif so far in the volleyball season. What do you hear about the Concord district?
Concord's always strong. Westfield's actually down a little bit this year. They graduated a number of players last year. Centreville, is usually one of the stronger teams. They've been to the states, state tournament the last couple of years. The interesting thing about volleyball last year, if you look at all the district tournament winners, none of them went to even the region semifinals. So volleyball is a sport where you got to get hot at the right time. So even if you're winning now, and that's not going to say you're going to win later on.
Mm-hmm.
Doyle at Langley. She's going to carry that team, I think, this fall. And if you look at that Liberty district, traditionally very balanced district, but I think Langley, like Dave said, is probably the best team to come out.
Mm-hmm. An underrated aspect in volleyball is always chemistry. And I think, in talking to a lot of coaches in the last week, you're seeing teams that right now are still trying to feel their way through the lineup, still trying to figure out who's going to fill what role. I mean, there are so many roles on a volleyball court that need to be filled with players that are pretty competent and can do it night in and night out. And I think as you see teams get closer to the district schedule, and right now they're in sort of the early part of the district schedule, you might see some teams that in the early part of the season weren't so strong get a little bit stronger as the season goes on, as they gain more experience and more confidence in their roles.
The only sport in the fall that doesn't have to worry about what's going on outside, what the weather is, because they're going to play regardless. They play indoors.
Exactly. Good point. As always, my friend.
That's what I'm here for.
Cross country is a sport that constantly has to worry about weather. All the time.
And they play in it.
And they play in it, exactly. But you were at the Monroe Parker meet this past weekend. It's such a fantastic event every season. It's sort of the unofficial kickoff to the cross-country season. And really, they do so many things in this region sometimes that just makes you bang your head against the wall about why would they do this to the kids. One of the greatest things I've ever seen in this region in the last few years was when they moved Monroe Parker to the weekend and added freshman races, JV races to the docket. I think it's such a great way to get younger runners involved right now in the sport and give them sort of a centerpiece meet at the beginning of the season to strive for. But what did you see at Monroe Parker that impressed you?
Well, first of all, I agree with you. They moved that thing to Saturday, and 2 years in a row now they've had great weather. It's been cool and hasn't been terribly humid, and they run 6 races and they're out of there by 1 o'clock.
Right.
This year, Melissa Dewey at Hayfield won by such a wide margin, we wondered if anybody else was in the field. She came across the finish line, I think. The next finisher was maybe 2 minutes. The Jefferson boys were very strong. They kind of ran away from the pack. The girls' race, like Braddock, had a sort of surprising showing. Mike Mangan, their coach, worked them harder that week. He didn't really expect them to do much, but they won. And Westfield girls are going to be strong as well.
Right.
A team that wasn't there, the Oakton Cougars, neither boys or girls teams were there. But they went to another meet and they won easily, both varsity teams. So they're going to be in the mix. They kind of always go hide, and then they come back at the end of the season and they're in the game.
Mangan told me actually kind of a funny story this week about the Monroe Parker meet. He's one of those coaches that sometimes thinks that it might be better for a team to stumble early. Just maybe you don't come out and run as well. You can use that as sort of a thing to push you along. He said he walked into the team meeting this week and he's like, guys, what can I tell you? You were phenomenal. I got no criticisms for you. And actually, they're in Hawaii this week, believe it or not. They're running in a meet in Hawaii, which is kind of mind-blowing if you think about it.
I think they were supposed to leave. He was kind of worried that they weren't going to get out of town.
With the weather?
I think they're probably going to. Maybe they're already gone.
Now, you and I were talking before the show about cross-country. We both covered the sport pretty extensively over the last, 4, 5, 6 years. And every year it seems like there's one knockout favorite runner on the girls' side, one great runner on the boys' side. I mean, even going back to, Kelly Ottstott, now in Webb, Erin Swain, Matt Malign, Christo Landry last year. Clearly, Dewey is that kind of runner from Hayfield. She is, without a doubt, the class of the region. Boys' side, Brad Saragusa from Chantilly won the Monroe Parker. You do have a number of runners that were sort of in the mix as that race materialized towards the finish line. Is it sort of a bit more homogenous on the boys' side this year than in years past?
It seems to be. It seems to be kind of maybe like the Liberty District in football. You don't really know who's going to, individually, who's going to come out of that thing and win it.
I mean,
Right.
Syracuse only finished 10th at the region championships last year, so it's hard to say if he's going to continue to do well.
Right, exactly. And I mean, it just seems like, I mean, we've all covered these cross-country meets. We remember seeing Alan Webb when he ran in this region, finishing what seemed like 6 hours before the rest of the field. And I wonder, what do you think? Does it make for a better cross-country race to not have somebody setting a record? Would you rather see a close pack towards the finish?
It depends on what you're looking for. If you're a fan, you want a good close race. If you're in our shoes, you want a story. And the story is someone blowing the competition away. I mean, let's face it. In cross country, you want the dominating runner because that's the story. And in Melissa Dewey's case, she is the story this fall. I think to keep your eye on, see how she does throughout the district regions and what she does against the rest of the state down at the championship.
The boys, it's the gambling.
That's
Who's going
right.
to win it? Who's going to win it?
Now, I heard Webb was at the. Did you see Webb at the meet?
Yes, he was there.
And was he treated like the Messiah that he is for?
Yeah, he was treated like the Messiah.
There you
As
go.
a reporter, I didn't, but I kind of wanted to go up to him and say, what happened at the Olympics? But,
You're not the only one asking him
he's
that.
asking, he's answered that question enough, I guess. But
I
he
can
was
imagine.
giving out the awards. And,
Oh, he was giving out the awards,
giving
huh?
out the awards. Seemed very happy. People, everybody in the world got their picture taken with him. So, seemed to be a nice day.
There you go. I kind of
Maybe in 4 years it'll be worth something.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I wish I got my picture taken when we was in high school.
Yeah.
Worth something now. Anyway, football last week. So we're going to be in worth something. Week 1 was worth something. Week 1 was worth a lot of attention because there was a lot of very close games, very exciting games. I don't think there's a lot of real big surprise upsets in Week 1, but there was some good football played.
Tell you what, McLean winning to start the year. They've won 3 games the previous 2 years. That was a big story.
Yeah.
You've got the first blowout in the Outback Challenge since 1999 was the big story in Vienna. You've got the Division 6 schools obviously getting off, Westfield, Robinson, Centreville getting off to the good start that everybody thought they would. The Westfield had some problems over there in Annandale.
Well, let's get right to it, actually. We can review here. Westfield and Annandale, the first game we were looking at, 26-24. I mean, that's a remarkably close game. Probably opened up a lot of eyes. I mean, I've been saying for a while that I think Annandale is going to be one of the class teams. Surprised anyone this score being so close?
Not really. I mean, I think if you look at Westfield, you had 2 questions coming into the season. One, could Evan Royster do the same things he did last year without the cast around him, and could they dominate like they did last year? I mean, they were putting up 40 points a game last year, blowing everybody out. I think you see in this game, Royster ran for 200 yards, a few touchdowns, so he's still able to run. He's probably one of the top junior tailbacks in the nation. But also, it was a 2-point game, so they're gonna face some challenges this year.
I think what you're going to have to look at Westfield this year and kind of keep an eye on is last year Evan Royster was asked to play simply running back.
Right.
This year, with all the graduations they've had off that defense, they're asking him to play defensive back as well. Now, he's going to run for 225 yards in Week 1. We'll see how he's doing in Week 7 in the middle of that Concord
Having to
District
play
playing both
both
ways. If he's still able to run for a couple hundred yards a game, I think Westfield's a playoff team. If he's slowing down a little bit, and that puts added pressure on their quarterback, they're a borderline playoff team.
Well, I think Westfield they have a tough game here. They don't have a terribly difficult out-of-district schedule, so you can definitely think that he's going to get some rest against some of these mediocre teams.
Centreville, West Springfield went about the way everyone thought it was going to go. Bit of a blowout. 28-7 was your final score. Is this any sort of a test for Centreville? Do we have any kind of an inkling of whether they're the real deal based on this game, or are they going to have to play some other competition before?
They're going to have to play, but I mean, this is one of the better out-of-district teams that they're going to play. I think Oakton's going to give them a run for their money. Westfield will be a big district game. To put up 28 points on West Springfield, not too bad. I thought they could do a little better, but I think most people would say they're the top team in the region. So this is a good win in Week 1.
Tell you what, if being the top-ranked team in the region and everybody's favorite this year isn't enough, missing the playoffs for the first time in 6 years certainly fired those boys and Mike Skinner up over at Centreville this year. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see them run the table.
Next game, Hayfield, Mount Vernon. This was sort of an interesting barometer for both of these teams, and I think Hayfield passed the test pretty well. 21-13, the final Coleman, the big running back from Mount Vernon, was sort of limited. He didn't get enough carries, and he certainly didn't get anywhere close to being 100 yards rushing for the game. The great news for Hayfield, their sort of featured fullback this year in the option offense, Ernest Asante, who came over from Annandale before the season, had over 100 yards, well over 100 yards, scored, big game. Hayfield looked pretty good in week 1.
And I know they're one of the teams that could, I know we were talking about before the show, Concord could put 2 or 3 teams in the playoffs. Hayfield's one of those Patriot District teams that very well could take that 4th spot if you think that Centreville, Oakton, Robinson take the top 3.
Now, Dave, you're a bit of an aficionado of the National District. Is Mount Vernon still, despite losing to a Division 6 team in week 1, one of the class teams of the National?
I think so this year. I think probably the Nationals a little. Last year it was Yorktown ran the table in the district. This year, that's not going to happen. Not with Yorktown anyhow. They lost too many people to graduation. But Edison's going to be good. Mount Vernon's going to be good. Jefferson, the National District last week, for the first time since the district was formed in '94, in the opening week of the season, didn't have a losing record. I think it's a combined. They were 4-4, and they beat 2 Division 6 teams. So they're excited about that. I don't know if that means anything go down the road.
Well, there you go. One of those Division 6 teams to fall to the National District was the Bruins of Lake Braddock, losing 22-7 to the mighty BYU Colonials of Thomas Jefferson. Coach O'Reilly over there has that team throwing the ball and playing good offense. 22-7 the final. Obviously, for Lake Braddock, it's a very, very adverse situation with the school right now. Their starting quarterback, Mark Wade, broke his leg in a scrimmage you saw. What was the situation? You remember it all?
I think, if I remember, it was I think it was a rollout pass, and then I think he took off running, and he got hit pretty hard.
Yeah, he got carted off.
They carried him off.
Wow.
He didn't go off on the stretcher, but they carried him off, and then they didn't play. Lake Braddock didn't play well after that.
Right.
They didn't move the
Kind
ball
of like the
much.
Jets and Chad Pennington last year.
Kind of like the Jets and Chad Pennington, says the Giant fan to the Jet fan. And the interesting thing about Lake Braddock is how they sort of handled the situation, where they've taken a kid named Matt Weiler, who was a defenseman on the soccer team last year. This is his first season playing football. He's a junior at the school. And basically what they did is they took the best athlete who wasn't a senior and just threw him into the role. And they're going to see how he grows and see if they can get a quarterback for next season and for the rest of this season. And it's an interesting way to do it, obviously out of necessity a little bit. And score is a little deceptive. Braddock actually had a chance to win the game. Weiler actually ran a ball into the end zone and got called back on a penalty. It would have given them the lead in the 4th quarter. But Jefferson's got to be pretty happy. I mean, this is a major PowerPoint victory for them in what should be a pretty tight national district.
It's interesting that the 3 teams in the region that are really going to emphasize the pass this year, Jefferson, you've got McLean, and Falls Church, all came up with big week 1 wins, got off on the right foot, and it's going to be interesting to see. Falls Church has Madison this year, or this week, which is kind of reeling a little bit, trying to bounce back after the loss to Oakton. You got Jefferson with a big game against Langley, obviously wants to bounce back after the loss against Robinson. And McLean looking to go to 2-0, which would match their win total.
Unheard of in
one
McLean.
More. Yeah, they need one more win to match their win total from the previous 2 seasons combined. So.
We had an interesting debate about this, actually, the passing offense. What's your opinion about teams that pass the ball a little bit? Do you think it's good or bad for what it takes to win in high school football?
I think probably defensive running the ball is ultimately what's going to win.
Yeah.
You think of all the region champions that we've had here, Division 5, Division 6, and most of them run the ball and played strong defense. Especially in bad weather. You're going to have some weather.
I think you look at this first week, obviously these teams put up some good numbers. I mean, in Falls Church's case, great numbers in their game. Maybe it's a case of the offense being a little bit ahead of the defense at this point. I mean, you think about kids that are going to play defense in their first varsity game of the season. They're probably really in tune to plugging the holes in the line, doing all that thing. Maybe a passing offense is a little bit ahead of them. And the same thing with Hayfield. I mean, their option offense probably a little bit ahead of where Mount Vernon's defense is. So the question is, does it all even out?
That would go against the norm, though. Most of the time you're going to see defenses that are going to be ahead of the offense. That's why in early season games you're going to see coaches prefer to have their defense out on the field earlier, because your defense, you'd rather have your defense out there and maybe use the give but don't break formula, rather than have your offense out there and make a big turnover that's going to cost you late in the game.
And I know some teams run the more basic offenses the first games, like Herndon, they were running, sweep left, sweep right, against Wakefield, and they won 50-0.
Herndon's been running that offense for
Right.
15 years.
Briefly, the other game we want to just touch on real quick: Robert E. Lee 20, West Potomac 18, first win of the season, and first win of his Lee career for Chad Lewis, who came over from WNL to replace Jerry Pannoni at Lee. Good win for the Lancers, gets them off on the right foot. Again, it's a Division 6 team and a Division 5 district, and we'll see where they go from there.
And, the first time since 1990 that Lee enters the season as the defending district champion in the playoff team.
All right, let's go to the FSN Unit of the Week. The Oakton Cougars defense, who shut down the Madison Warhawks 24-0. What do you say, Joe? You were at that game.
Well, Dave and I were both at that game, and equally impressed, I think, with how the Cougars did on defense. And this is a team with Matt Butler and with Cody Grimm, just fly to the ball. They got the 2 transfers, the Stone kid and the help me out here. The other kid from Episcopal.
Transfer B.
Yeah, transfer B. The 2 of those guys at linebacker, and then the Butler out of the defensive backfield, and Grimm, who I guess is considered a linebacker, but you never know where he starts because he finishes anywhere on the field that you can imagine. And just a great all-around effort. And some people over in Oakton already comparing this defense to the 2002 defense that led that team to the state championship game.
Yeah, I guess time will tell. That's a tall order, but maybe they look pretty impressive, especially in the second half, as you saw.
Absolutely.
In the first half, Madison moved the ball a little bit. They didn't do anything in the second half.
First half, Madison was held without a first down until about 6 or 7 minutes left in the second quarter. And then in the second half, just a completely dominating effort. But I think it had a little bit to do with them keeping the ball out of Madison's hands in the second half as well. Oakton was able to control the ball offensively as well, which we all know a good offense is obviously translates to a good defense.
Right. Oakton was pretty physical in defense too, especially special teams. A couple big hits in that game for Oakton.
Well, and Grimm is the catalyst on special teams as well. I tell you what, Joe Thompson told me before the season he thinks pound for pound, Cody Grimm might be the best player in the state of Virginia. It's too bad that he's 5'10", 180 pounds.
All right.
He's a good lacrosse player, too.
Absolutely.
There you go. Well, that's last week. Let's move on to this week. We got a bunch of picks to make right here, and some very, very interesting matchups this week in the Northern Region, boys. Let's begin with W.T. Woodson at Edison. It's an inter-district game, and a one that I think we all agree is going to really open some eyes as to who is going to be a contender in both the Liberty and the National this year. Picks-wise, everyone here likes W.T. Woodson, save for you, Mr. Fasanoli. You are the odd duck, and you like Edison.
Yeah.
Why do you like him?
Just a feeling, a hunch. I don't know. I don't have anything to back it up. That's
hairs on the
scary.
back of your neck stand up when you think of Edison, that sort of thing.
Maybe a little bit. Just a hunch.
Now, obviously, when you talk about this matchup, the interesting thing is that Kevin Roberts is Edison's featured back this year.
Right.
Had a pretty strong week 1. Woodson's defense, shut out Stewart, but they shut out Stewart. And it'll be interesting to see how they handle a featured back like this, and it'll be very interesting to see offensively versus an Edison defense that some people say is a little bit underrated right now, what they're able to do.
Right, and I think it was a big test for Edison. They beat Chantilly, a Division 6 team, so they're going to be pretty hyped up for that, and we'll see if they can keep that going.
And should they win, that's going to put the scare in a lot of the national district teams.
Oh yeah.
Tell you what, the 3 of us took Woodson in this game, but Edison's at home.
Mm-hmm.
They have Von Lewis, who's been there forever.
Right.
And they've got the fact they're coming off the Division 6 win. They're also, they're gonna want to get Coleman. I'm sorry.
Roberts.
Roberts going.
Yeah.
And I think that they probably will be able to, facing a team with a new system with Gary Pannoni over there.
Do you stand by your pick? You could jump off your pick right now if you want.
Team
to.
scores 62 points. They're gonna go win the next game.
All right, fair enough. Annandale at Centreville is the other game. One of the other games we're looking at. It's a clean sweep across the board, boys. Centreville. Now, why did we all pick Centreville? Annandale came within 3 points of beating Westfield last week. What's the deal?
Centreville's going to have 5, possibly 6 guys playing Division I college football next year. This is an extremely talented team over there, and I think that with a sophomore quarterback behind center at Annandale, I think that defense is going to be able to take advantage of his inexperience.
Centreville actually lost this matchup last year in week 2 when the weather was kind of bad in week 2 last year. The punter dropped 2 snaps inside his own 10-yard line. That punter's not on the team this year. I like Centreville.
Yeah. I'm listening to you guys.
Clean sweep. All right, Herndon at South Lakes. what's this thing called? What's the big
The
rivalry?
Baron Cameron.
The Baron Cameron Bowl. And I'm the odd duck this week. I took South Lakes in this game. Everybody else took Herndon. And I got to be honest with you, it's the same. It's the Fasanoli theorem. I got a feeling about South Lakes in this game. Tommy Meyer is going for a coaching milestone this week, Mr. Graham.
He will be. He picked up win number 99 last week against Wakefield. They've been going for 100. And like he said most coaches don't win 50 games in high school. He's been at Herndon a long time, and he would love to pick up win 100 against the Seahawks in Reston this week.
Highlight game of the year for Herndon. Every year. This used to be the Week 10 matchup, the Baron Cameron Bowl. When I was in high school at Herndon, this is the game that they amped up for every year. Won it 10 years in a row until a couple years ago. I think Coach Meyer is like 13-1 in this game since he took over at Herndon, or some ridiculous record like that. And just a big game, not only traditionally, but for Herndon this year. They need to win all of their non-district games. Maybe save for that game against Robinson. It's going to be a tough game for them to win if they're going to try to make a push for the playoffs again this year.
And then finally we have what has all of a sudden become an extremely intriguing matchup. You've got Langley at 0-1 after losing to Robinson in Week 1 against Jefferson, who's 1-0 after beating Braddock. The big vertical attack of the Colonials versus the big running game of the Saxons. We all take Langley, and tell me if I'm wrong on this one. I took them because I just think their offensive line is going to be able to do more against Jefferson's line than they were able to do against Robinson's line.
And weather could probably play a big part in this.
Huge.
And you're not going to be passing very much in Ivan like weather.
Ivan like weather, to coin a phrase. Still, though, I mean, could you imagine if Jefferson winds up winning this game, 2-0, haven't played a district game yet? I mean, you're talking Colonials with controlling basically their own destiny for the postseason.
After 2 weeks.
Right.
What?
They're not going to win this game.
Oh, but what if they did? They're
Langley.
smart.
They are.
That's right.
14-20, I believe, is what their average SAT score was this past
And
year.
they
That's
came,
not going to help.
but
you
they came
stop,
for the sports.
That's not going to help you stop 275-pound offensive linemen
All right.
pushing you up and down the field.
Fair enough. Let's wrap up, boys. That's the week in preview, and we will review it next week. Want to thank everybody for watching. Want to remind everybody, high school game of the week this week. It's a big one. The Chantilly Chargers and the Robinson Rams. Saturdays at 6 on Cox, Channel 35, and repeats every day, 5 a.m., 6 p.m. FSN and Cox, we've got a bunch of upcoming games. You see Fairfax and Woodson, that big city rivalry, Hayfield, West Springfield, and then Robinson and Braddock in what should be an interesting game. Brian's Grill, come on down, see us. It's a great time. Thanks everybody here for their hospitality. Wednesdays at 10, Fairfax Sports Report on Comcast Channel 10. And full game coverage of the Herndon game at Wakefield at Herndon, Saturdays and Sundays 7 to 9. Cox Cable, Channel 23. And, of course, the Fairfax Sports Report and the Benorf Bench. Come on down. Brian's Grill, Wednesday nights is when we tape. And you can catch those shows Wednesdays at 8, and then our show the following day. Send us email. We'd like to hear from you. info@fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. Thanks to Quality Care Ford Service Center for all your service center needs, 703-383-6299. And, of course, CCI Screen Printing for all your screen printing needs, 703-978-0257. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks to everybody for coming tonight and all the insight and all the good stuff. And we have a good football Friday. Hope it's not too wet.
Bring your umbrellas.
Bring your rain slickers.
Coach Bender was still here.
Rain slickers.
Football weather.